Vasilievich will be speaking today, and then Masoud Kalakali, Liang Liu, and Michał Rochna will be speaking tomorrow. I'm very happy, and just since we are we squeezed 3 lectures in 3 hours, so I'll be very happy to introduce our first speaker, Bruno Jochum, who knows a lot, if not everything, about spectral geometry and spectral action, and I'm very happy to have him here and to speak from, well, close to Aix, somewhere in the south of France, to all the people who are around the world. I see UK, Brazil, Mexico, US, I guess, Italy, Poland, and many, many other countries. So Bruno, please, we are very happy, and the screen is yours.
How about recording?
And we start recording, yes.
Okay, good. So thanks, Andrzej. So it's a pleasure to begin this series of lectures here. Of course, I would rather prefer to be in wonderful town of Krakow, but well, I guess that's the way it is these days. So, okay, before I forget, my collaborator on this subject are Michał Stein, Dries Eswerdry, Victor Guéral, Cyril Lévy, and Thierry, and Andrzej, and Mitri, I guess you are here. So what I plan to do is just to describe a huge landscape, so it will be very quick, and I will focus on some details, but please don't pay attention to the fine structure of the details. I mean, maybe the music, even if my English is terrible, maybe only the music is important. So, oops. In physics, well, what can do the non-predictive geometry for you? There is a kind of dogma, namely that every physical measurable quantity has a spectral or geometrical origin. Spectral and geometry, is a kind of oxymoron. It's spectrum refers to quantum mechanics, like geometry refers to more to something like relativistic field theory. And what happens in non-predictive geometry? You have only in your hand a triple here. A is an algebra, which corresponds to the observables, acting on some Hilbert space, H, which is just the state space of your system. And D is just any self-adjoint operator with compact resonant, in a simplified case. And the compatibility with A is just that D has a bounded commutative with the algebra. There are essentially 2 examples. One, what I think as continuous case, which is based on a Riemannian compact spin manifold M, where you have smooth function, natural Hilbert space, and your Dirac operator associated to your spin structure. But interesting enough is a discrete case, namely the standard square matrices acting on Cn, and D is any self-adjoint matrix, which is a good example of spectral tripping. So conceptually, from the beginning, you have discrete and continuous objects which are put on the same footing, and this is really essential. And it's particularly used in particle physics when you have the discrete space describing the internal symmetries and the product with manifold, which are the background space-time. And what is the role of D? D describes a lot of things. Today it will be essentially the infinitesimal of the geometry. It appears in many situations, like in the computation of an element, of the distance, of the geodesics, differential, and so forth. A lot of things that I will not consider today. So the lecture is about action. What is an action? Essentially, you take your favorite fields, which is relevant for you, and you want to extract from this a number, right? So it may be a functional. Okay, typically in classical mechanics, we have a Lagrangian, typically this form, and for this Lagrangian, you extract a number, O, well, just to compute Lagrangian with respect to some generalized coordinate system. for the position and equation between this interval of time, and well, this gives you a number. So what for? It's just a number. Well, you could apply the least action principle, namely these constraints here will generate the dynamics. So in some sense, you have changed your paradigm. Namely, the postulates of the theory are now given in terms of the action and not in terms of the equation of motion. Of course, this is a definition of a mathematician, because as a physicist, I know that before the end of the day, I have to solve the equation of motion. But in general, it's not that easy. So even if this is something which is really conceptual, it is interesting because it's universal. It appears in classical mechanics. Here I quote several people who made important contribution to this, but also, for instance, in quantum mechanics. Look, for instance, at the state psi, the evolution operator H is the Hamiltonian here, applied on X naught. Then you can recover this complex number just by looking at your state, considered at all paths starting at t equals 0 from your original point here, and modified by a phase. And this phase is just the classical action. Okay? And you have to integrate with respect to some measure. This is difficult path here. This is the measure on the space of all paths. So this is also related to the Feynman-Katz formula with this type of idea. So you see, this appears in different situations, especially in classical geometry of general relativity, where there is this very famous Einstein-Hilbert action, which is nothing else but the integral with respect to the manifold of the scalar curvature. This is the volume form. And if you have not only a space-time, but you have also some matter that you can put inside, just you have the Lagrangian of your matter here. And okay, what for? But it's just a number. Again, if you apply your least action principle, then you get the Einstein's equations. So of course, you have not the solution, but you have something which is at a more conceptual level. Okay, and even if it's conceptual, it's really interesting. So what can we do in non-PU geometry? Well, a long time ago, Alain and Ali, sorry, Shamsuddin and Kohn proposed the following principle, still the same dogma. The physical action should only depend on the spectrum of D. So if it depends only on D, how to extract a number from the operator, just take its trace. Simple. Well, you know, sometimes D is not trace class, or if it is, its trace could be 0 if the spectrum is symmetric. So they propose the following definition, having two objects, a positive function and a positive number. Oops, sorry, and then you compute the trace of f of absolute value of D with this dilation by number, 1 of lambda. And this lambda we play the role of scale parameter. So what is the dimension of this? Same as D, so the inverse of LN. How useful can be this definition? Well, first, it's really simple, because take, for example, the characteristic function of 0, 1. What is this spectral action? It is nothing else but the number of the values of D which are less than lambda. Okay? So, what again are the advantages of this? There are several. Well, first one, due to this computation, this is really simple. Okay, the simplicity is important. It's also positive. When your function is positive, you preserve positivity. So that's fine, because in physics we are used to this. what about the invariance? Well, since we are working with trace, the invariance group of the spectral action is a unitary group of your Hilbert space. And you know, you have this triple. Hilbert space is always here, and A acts on this Hilbert space, and you can change a little bit the algebra or change a little bit the Hilbert space. And this invariance group can be large, which is fine. What is the role of lambda? Well, this is in the spirit of Brandt unification framework, where you can move the lambda, and you have this characteristic cutoff scale at which the action is a bare action when you run this parameter. And
sorry, can I ask a question, Bruno?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. Hi. So sorry for interruption. I was wondering, in this picture, can you give a very kind of concise formula for expectation values of observables? I mean, in this spectral action picture.
Not. I am talking about only the action here. Okay. So you have nothing else than your Dirac operator.
Right, but eventually we want to compute some expectation values of observables for any physical system.
Yeah, this is another story. This is not out of this game at this level. Okay?
I see. So there's no, okay.
So this is an interesting point, but this is not directly related to this. I'm sorry. So
Bruno, can I? It's Ludwig. Hi, Bruno.
Sure.
So my question is following one. So this unitary is a really big, all unitaries on the Hilbert space. And you don't need to preserve your algebra, so the spectral triple is not built on a given algebra or kind of that?
Well, you can make a transport. I mean, you can transport your algebra, okay, and you will get something which is equivalent. So you could work on a different notion of equivalence, unitary equivalence, Morita equivalence, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But the important point is that you have a natural invariance here, which is totally under control via the trace.
Okay.
So
this technical point, Bruno.
Yeah.
Can you possibly move speak louder or move closer so that?
Good. Yeah, the sound is not very good.
Yeah, the sound quality is rather poor. Yes.
Oh, I see. So I speak louder. Okay, good. So what is the role of F?
Maybe closer to the computer, I don't know what it would work.
Yeah, okay. So the role of F is very clear. In mathematics, you need F of G, trace class, so no doubt about this. But in physics, you get flexibility a bit because F appears via its moment in practice. And this provides parameters that you can adjust with your data in some sense. But this is an extra piece. So what is the role of F?
Sorry, but what do you mean by moments? I don't understand what are moments of F.
It's a moment of a function. Take the integral of xn f of x dx. I'm sorry, I cannot write. But I will show you in a moment. Something. Okay. But Alain Shamseddine and Walter von Hülshoff introduced using second quantization an example of computation of entropy where they were able to produce some natural F, which is related directly to the Riemann zeta function. And in some sense, you could dream of some natural F. But I must confess that at this very moment, F is still unclear to me. Yet at this moment, we have no natural definition for natural F. So this is an extra parameter which is not natural. So if you look at the particle physics, well, as I said, if you pay attention to the continuous case, so you have your favorite manifold, in dimension 4. Here you have a spin connection, okay? And you have this space-time, and you add some finite space, namely this algebra, D H runs for quaternions. D will encode all the Yukawa grouping that you could expect. And H will be the choice of elementary particles. Here where you choose your H. And you compute S. It's important to see that at this level, you turn the crank, you have no choice. I mean, everything is rigid, you automatically get this result. Namely, here you have the volume form and your manifold. You have several terms. The first one is, say, the green one is the cosmological constant. The second one is the appearance of the Einstein-Hilbert term. And then you have blue terms here, or you have Weil term, a Gauss-Bonnet term, something related to the gluon, the field strength, something related to the hypercharge. Here, last line, you have the Higgs sector here. Okay.
So, sorry, what is F in this case?
Okay, let me add that you have F in this side, no F here. So F depends on the moment of F. Here you have your moment. Okay.
Okay,
this is
right.
Waiting here, F2, and this is only this moment. F4 because you are in dimension 4.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. And we have no lambda on this side, on the right side. So gamma 0 in lambda 4 is dimension. So the green, the Einstein-Hilbert action is lambda 0. And the blue thing is lambda 0. So it's just independent of lambda. It's important because this means the system is independent of dilation. Okay. And all these coefficients in this colored films depend, of course, on the fermionic content that you have input inside. And if you want details, you could see as this book. And a second example comes from the cosmology called models, which can be essentially driven by Mathilde, Marcoli, and collaborators, Sakellari Adou and other people, where it's difficult to make a resume, but essentially they run the Yukawa coupling for large lambda. And they try to reproduce, you are convinced or not, several scenarios, so in cosmology like primordial black holes or some emergent cosmologies using seesaw mechanism. The Einstein-Hilbert term is subdominant compared with the conformal term. And they also try to classify the topology associated with the different space-time they consider. And they use essentially the idea that the Einstein-Hilbert action is local, while the Dirac operator is a global motion. So using scalar perturbation of the Laplacian, they generate a mechanism and they were able to distinguish between different terms. There are also works on the Robertson-Walker spacetime, mainly with Massoud and collaborators, where they were interested by the coefficients and their dependence on the scaling factors and their derivative. And they found an interesting and nice question about the hypothetic structure behind this. So again, you could look at this book if you want details. And in some sense, I could stop my lecture here because essentially I have said everything is known with application with physics. But since I have more times, I will continue. And I will continue by, there are difficulties. Where are the difficulties? Well, essentially, the spectrum of D is unknown, and you have to compute the trace of F of D, so no chance. And even if the spectrum is known, like for Dirac operator on sphere or tori or sympathetic manifolds, then you have to dress your spectral triple with fluctuation. Namely, you add to D, you have to add a gauge potential. All one form are finite sum of terms like this. So, from a mathematical point of view, D and DA defines the same K homology class, so they are indistinguishable. But for physicists, this application of gauge potential is quite essential. So the spectrum of this fluctuation is unknown for sure. So what can you do? Well, you could ask for less, namely the existence of asymptotic expansion, maybe. And at this level, I'm sorry, but I'm obliged to enter into the details. So,
excuse me, may I have a question? Adam Wegert here. So my question is, if we know the spectrum of D, what can be said about the spectrum of DA?
Nothing in general. At least all example I know, you can't say nothing because you add to D something which depends on the commutator and so on. And I know no example the spectrum D plus A is known. No example. But
Okay.
maybe you have something in mind. I don't know.
But the growth of the eigenvalues would remain the same, yes? The dimension spectrum.
No. I will explain the dimension spectrum. Dimension spectrum. Okay, if you accept, be patient enough, I will explain this in a moment. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So you start with a triple and you want to do pseudo differential calculus. So you take the commutator with absolute value of D. Be careful, D is differential operator. Absolute value of D is so the square root of the Laplacian is a pseudo differential operator. Then you define up zero, there's an operator of order zero, like the intersection of all domains, so it's the domain of smoothness of your objects, and the operator of order R, just you multiply by this. Here there is a little difficulty. R must be negative, so you must be sure that your operator is invertible here. So you add the projection of the kernel. So you are sure that this straight D is invertible. And exactly like in the commutative case, the order zero terms, are bounded, and of order one are compact. And well, a little definition, which, okay, it says that if you are in a regular case, it's a standard case, if A and commutator with D are pseudo differential operator of order zero, not only bounded operator, okay? And then we have as a real definition of pseudo differential operator. So what you have in mind is the following. T has this form. Oh, sorry, difficult to. So here you have absolute value of D to the power of minus P, P is an integer, modified by something which is in the polynomial algebra generated by all objects, plus something. And plus something means what? What you have in mind is that you are working with a smoothing operator in classical theory. So, but here we have no symbols, we have no parametrics, so we need a good definition. So the good definition, or a good one at least, is a pseudo differential operator is an operator of this form, where the object that you add here is in up minus n with an arbitrary n. So this is a set of all t's which have such dichotomy for any n. And smoothing operator is when n goes to infinity. So typically, D to the power R is a pseudo differential operator. And if you want an example of smoothing operator, take an operator of order R, positive, which is as operator is positive and invertible, then the it operator associated is smoothing. And we are sure that we are on the right track, thanks to Alain, because in the classical case, commutative case, then all of these objects are within the classical pseudo differential operator of integer order. classical meaning, but it's symbol of good asymptotics. Okay? So I need two notions. The first one is simple. I want the notion of dimension for a triple. So here I take d to the power minus q, and when I move q at some point, it's phase class, okay, and then it remains phase class. So P will be the infimum of such q, and this is called the dimension of your triple. And if you are in this nice situation, then we have the notion of dimension spectrum, which is difficult. Namely, a subset of the complex number will be called the dimension spectrum of the triple when first it is discrete and when for any pseudo-differential operator of order 0, the zeta function associated, which is nothing else but the trace of d to the power minus s, s is a complex number times d, which is defined when the real part of s is greater enough, which is part of the definition. This zeta function has a meromorphic extension and with poles possibly, and all the poles are located in SD. In other words, SD concentrates all the difficulties of all your zeta function associated to your triples. Okay, but be careful. A function has a pole if it exists. So you need to prove the existence of the meromorphic extension. And here you have to be careful. A plays a role because A sits within the pseudo-differential.
Sorry, Bruno. I mean, do you assume? I suppose you assume that the heat kernel there is an expansion for heat kernel, right?
No. I assume nothing. This is just definition. I will come back to this problem later on.
Oh, so, but then how do you show this meromorphic extension? Oh, this is.
I know this is definition.
Oh, this is definition. I see. That's not existence. Right. Okay.
No. What's the point? You are right to insist on that. You have to prove that this function has a meromorphic extension.
No. This is fine. You're just defining it, right? You're not claiming its existence. Yeah.
It's the definition. Yeah. Okay.
So can we just take the operator T to be identity in a definition?
Yeah, sure. The identity is partly here by algebra as a unit here because I wanted to simplify the problem. You can remove this, but to simplify because life can be complicated already at this level. So let me suppose that my algebra as a unit. Okay. So T can be that. So in the commutative spectral triple, what is all this strange set? This is just a set of all integers which are less than your dimension. Okay, and so this is not complex number. This is just integers. But well,
this definition.
Problem. The problem is that, for instance, if your spectral triple has no dimension, then you see, you see here T is 1. This zeta function doesn't exist, so you have no dimension spectrum. So first remark. Second remark, well, we know example of standard of spectral triple with a standard Podolsky sphere, which are only say quasi-regular. So maybe A and dA are in larger sets. I don't want to enter into the detail, but this means that, you know, this is not that easy, this notion of regularity. But the most difficult problem is there is no systematic procedure to compute the dimension spectrum. A nice example to see is, suppose you have two spectral triple which are under control, okay, and you want to add them, okay. So it's natural you take the tensor product of the two. So the algebra is just the tensor product of the two algebras. The Hilbert space is just a tensor product, and D is just the sum of the two previous one. Okay, so you could expect that your dimension, so your problem is, if you want, is just the sum of the two previous set of problems, right? What could be else? So, but the point is there is no natural meromorphic extension of this zeta function compared with the two original ones. So you see, on each example you are working on, you are obliged to work from the scratch. There is no general field. Okay, so
another small question: Is it
yeah,
obvious? Is it obvious that if you can prove this meromorphic extension for some t,
yeah,
and then this spectrum is the same for all t?
oh
right?
no, the answer is no. The answer is no. The answer is no.
So the spectrum
You have to
really
control, you have to control for all t's. That's the point. And there is no connection between them. At least I was unable to with Michel Stein, we retried, but we failed. So I guess the answer is no.
So the spectrum, the set is the collection for all the these singular values for all t. Right.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah, but I
so
even
this SD.
made a conjecture on this in my book with Michel and a guy, an Australian guy, Edward MacDonald, found a counterexample, a trivial one. I mean, so you know, spectral triples, you have so many possibilities that okay. So I guess the answer is no. Okay, so let me continue with the notion. Which was introduced by Mariusz Wojcicki, well, it was last millennium actually. He proved that the classical pseudo-differential operators with integer order has only one trace, okay? So if you assume if you are in a good situation where everything is known, especially the dimension spectrum, Alain introduced the non-trivial integral of a pseudo-differential operator, or his complexity type operator, as a residue of the corresponding zeta function at s equals 0. This is a number, okay? And this exists because you have a dimension spectrum. And he proved that when you are in simple situation, or poles are simple, then again, this is a trace. Good. What is this trace? Well, in the commutative case, when you compute it, this is just proportional to the Dixmuir trace. What is Dixmuir trace? Roughly speaking, is the sum of the first eigenvalues normalized by the logarithm of the number of terms. Okay, this is a rough definition. So if you want more precise definition, look at these nice books here, which is not that easy. So I want to arrive at asymptotic expansion. So what means an asymptotic expansion? So very often you see this type of equality. You know, the spectral action is a kind of Laurent series with coefficients in terms of lambda. But what does it mean exactly? So we have to be very precise and have to introduce two definitions. The first one is a sequence of function is said to be the asymptotic scale at a point if each element of the sequence is a little o of the previous one. Example, take a point in X in R and take this sequence, power k. This is an asymptotic scale at X naught. This is what you use daily with Taylor series. Right? The less trivial example but pertinent is X minus 1 log square, X minus 1 log, X minus 1 log square, log X, 1, and so on and so on. This is an asymptotic scale at 0. And now, when you have an asymptotic scale, you want to define the asymptotic expansion of a given function, okay, with respect to this scale. Then this exists if there is a second set of functions which are capital O of the previous one, and such that the difference between G and the finite sum of the rows is a little o of your scale. You have n here, and this must be true for any n. And it's only in this case that you can write that G has this series as an asymptotic series. But this blue thing is just notation. That's important, very important, because in general it doesn't converge. Okay, so this is just notation. So just a remark, don't try to escape this double sequence, your scale and then the rows. With Misha, we tried a lot, and well, don't waste your time. It's impossible. Okay, if you want to cover the whole set of possible situations. So just to feel comfortable, look at simple example for manifold of dimension 1, the circle. Okay, so you have your algebra here, your natural Hilbert space, and the Dirac operator with the trivial structure. The spectrum is known, it's just Z. So your it operator of the Laplacian here, you have control, total control, so this is this formula. And this equality is just a Poisson formula. And here the terms that you can see in this series when t equals to 0 are exponentially small. So in this series, you have only one term, okay, which is here. And this can be generalized for any sphere of odd dimension. You will have here only a finite number of terms. But look, when t is this interval, if you look at the it operator of the square root of the Laplacian, okay, then this is natural formula. It can be revised like this, and this as a series, even the binary numbers here, and this means that all the coefficients are present. This means that this asymptotic expansion is infinite, okay, finite, infinite, even in dimension 1. Okay. Less trivial example, but it's essential. If P is a classical pseudo-differential operator for the M, positive, which is as operator is positive and elliptic, so you are sure that the spectrum is discrete, then the trace, the it trace here, and it's a theorem, has an asymptotic expansion with something that you saw before, some Laurent series, but you have appearance of log terms here, okay? And I do insist on the fact that this little symbol very often is just tilde. You don't want to write inequalities, you don't know, so you work it with tilde, but be careful. This can be read either with respect to this asymptotic scale, t to some power log, t to the same power, t to the same power plus 1 log, and so on, with respect to constant coefficient, there are some details, or with respect to another scale, the phi here, where I add some epsilon and introduce rows with different formulas, including the log. So you see, my message is very clear. If you are working with asymptotic series, please be very sympathetic with your reader. Write what is your scale and be careful with the proof of the existence of your asymptotics. That's my experience. Okay, an example again about the standard polarized sphere. I don't have the time to explain what it is. Let's say roughly that's just quantum sphere seen as homogeneous space under the action of SU2. And all these nice people and friends here have proved that there exists an spectral triple associated to this. Sorry, oops. And with Michał and Andrzej, we compute the spectral action associated to this spectral triple. And incredibly enough, we prove an equality here, non-asymptotics, which means that all the series that which appear here are convergent. And in terms of lambda, you have lambda to the power, and here we have little I. This means that the power is complex. Okay, you have appearance of log terms. You have appearance here of the generalized moment and for Masud, generalized moment of the function f, and coefficients. And the coefficients are computed explicitly with respect to the residues of your zeta function here. So because you have this complexification here, you have fluctuation. And this is why things are so complicated, because you have fluctuation, oscillation, and it's a miracle here that you have an inequality. This is essentially due to the fact that this spectral triple is of dimension 0. Just if you want to compare with SU2 or S3, in S3, and you do this, you have only one term in lambda 3, 2 dimension, this moment of F, one term in lambda, this moment of F, and that's it. Okay, 2 terms. So this quantum things theory, life is difficult. But sometimes life is easy. If you take for F, the Laplace transform.
Sorry, Bruno. I mean,
yeah.
In the case of Potlatch, you know the spectrum completely, right? The spectrum.
Yeah. This is why we were able to do the computation.
Then you could just sum this. But right now, somehow I'm confused why these complex terms appeared somehow.
Well, because there are poles in the whole complex plane.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. When you do metamorph. Okay, this is the full meromorphic extension now, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. You have to prove, but
Okay.
it's much easy because you know the spectrum.
Yes, of course.
The Japanese people are work on that, and you do these things.
Right.
So,
yeah. Okay. Very clear. Very good. Yeah.
And I just wanted to double check that the Dirac operator you are using on the Potlatch sphere is precisely this one by Dąbrowski-Sitarz, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I said well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but they are quoted here. I mean, okay.
Which is zero-dimensional, by the way.
Yes, it is zero-dimensional. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is why you can do this. Otherwise, so when F is the Laplace transform of measure, which means that F of D is this operator after integration, your spectral action is computable because the trace of this is just a trace of this it operator. So this is an it trace. But you have to compute if your it trace has an asymptotic, you have to compute the integrator by term. And you have to prove that nevertheless you still have an asymptotic. Does it work in general? Answer is no. So you have to do the job by yourself. And this important second remark is that this example to justify the simplicity of the action in non-conclusive geometry was this characteristic function, but this is not the Laplace transform of a function. So again, this is not the end of the story. So just to answer a previous question, it's part of our tour to say that, well, when you know the zeta function includes the t, and including t, or the heat trace, or the spectral action, which is more or less equivalent. Let's focus at this point, okay? For this, I introduce for P a real number. T of P is a set of operators which are positive and such that when to the power minus P minus epsilon is trace class, when to the power minus P plus epsilon is not trace class. So P is a boundary as before with dimension. So when K is a bounded operator, you define the function Z as a product of the zeta function times the gamma function. You find a complex number. Okay, and this exists when the real part of S is greater than P, which is the hypothesis. So you have poles for this Z function, which are poles of the zeta function plus the pole of the gamma function. Okay, this means that you could imagine the poles are everywhere in your planes. Okay, these are the points here. So I will slice this this plane with a sequence of numbers as R0, R1, R2, R3, and so on. and you get slice of your complex plane, okay? And now suppose you want to start from the E trace and you want to go to the zeta function. So within the framework I define, I assume that there exists an integer and an increasing sequence of terms, of real numbers, which define the discrete set defined by the strips defined by the sequence, such that you know everything on your each trace asymptotics, namely that these asymptotics, or the rows are, you know, something t to the power minus a complex number within the poles times log term with coefficients. And suppose that the series is absolutely converging on it. Then you can prove that your zeta function has a neuromorphic extension. And when you know this, all the poles are under control, and you know that the poles are in your space X, and the coefficients which appear here are known via formula, you know, via computation of residues.
So, excuse me, this calligraphic Z is the extension, yes, the meromorphic extension of zeta, yes?
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, do we have examples of spectral triples with existing asymptotics? Answer is yes. Take the non-commutative torus of dimension P. Then the zeta function, where T is an element in your algebra, okay? Well, you can prove that it has a meromorphic extension to the complex number with only one pole at half dimension. And when you know this, it's just a matter of computation. You know, the residue at this poles is easily computable. And this function is regular at 0. But this is a corollary of a previous result. I mean, if you want to access directly to this result, well, it's not that easy, believe me.
Sorry, Bruno, just a quick question. Does it depend on theta? Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Sorry, previous slide.
Yeah, yes. No.
Sorry, what's the question?
The question is, does it depend on, oh yeah, here, this residue. I see, no, that is there any dependence on theta?
No. No, at this level, no.
Yeah, because this is isospectral deformations, right?
Yeah, but be careful, we see something later on, precisely with respect to that point.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have, I'm sorry, there are a lot of traps here, so do we have example where all the zeta function has only a finite number of poles in vertical strips? The answer is yes. Classical pseudo-differential operator fall in this category. Non-commutative tori, SUQ2 quantum groups are in this category.
And so what do you mean by the plural? Why do you say quantum groups, not quantum group? I don't quite understand.
It's just SUQ2, you know, this SUQ2 things, okay, which was defined before. Okay.
I mean, because you see, that's not such a completely stupid question because.
No, I know. No, this is, you need to have a computable spectral triple, okay? So you need a Dirac, you need everything, okay? So this is the thing that you know quite well. This is what I referred to here, okay?
Yeah, what I meant is that these are the same sister algebras for different Qs, but they're non-isomorphic as quantum groups when you vary the Q. So that's some subtlety over there, but I would be surprised if you would care about it. So this is why I raised my question.
Oh, yeah, okay. So it depends on Q, definitely. So now suppose you want to go from the zeta function to the E trace, okay? So still within my previous framework, assume that you know everything on the zeta function, that you know that your zeta function has a meromorphic extension, okay, to the complex plane with a finite number of poles, vertical strips. And suppose that, and that your function z on a vertical here it's a complex number. On the vertical, you know the kind of behavior. Then if you fix a partition of R with a partition of the complex plane, then as before, you can prove the existence of an asymptotics with respect to that scale, namely your heat trace here has this asymptotics with this type of forms, always t to the power minus z log terms. And now it's easy to compute the coefficients, they are residues. But you know, you have to assume this, and you have to assume a finite number of poles. Okay, so I will not show you the case where you have infinite number of poles. Okay, do we have example of this? Yes, we do. Podeless spheres. Okay, is this exceptional? No, not at all. To my best knowledge, all examples of spectral triples based on fractals are in this category. Okay, so
in this infinite category, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you have
number of poles
are everywhere in the complex plane. Yeah. But before you have to show that there exists dimension spectrum. So maybe it's not proved in all cases. Okay. So maybe I'm late. So I don't know. What can I do? Do you want me to continue, say 5 minutes or not?
Say 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, 5. So it's important for a physicist to look at gauge potential. So you have to add your D some potential, okay? And okay, when you have a spectral triple with a dimension P with a dimension spectrum, then your fluctuation has the same dimension and the same dimension spectrum. Or not sorry, the dimension spectrum is included in the previous one. So the difficulty of this answer a previous question are included in the previous one. And an interesting fact is that if you compute the non-inclusive integral of d to the power minus pp, the dimension, this is non-sensitive to the fluctuation. This is why you have cosmological constant, and you can compute not only to the power dimension, but dimension -1, -2. These are easy things. I mean, it's just this can be computerized, I'm sure. Okay, and Ali and Alain proved this interesting result, namely that the regularity of the fluctuation of the constant terms can be written in terms of finite number of terms of this fluctuation. So that's interesting, but more interesting is that the recent progress made using cyclic cohomology, using Bibiko cycle, where if you accept this definition of Chern-Simons forms, here A is the operator, so you integrate operator, K is an integer, between 0 and 1. If you compute this, first term is A, here is something that you have seen before if you are a physicist, then the difference of the spectral action with this modification is a series, it is an equality of convergence series of these Chern-Simons forms, and this second term here integrate with respect to cycle and Orchilko chains. So this is really fundamental because this proves you that you are on the right track. Abstractly, we covers a huge situation. You know, spectral triple with boundaries, with asymptotics, and so on. So,
sorry, Bruno, just a stupid question because I'm confused. This A, which figures in your previous slide, what is it mathematically? What kind of an object is it? What is this A?
Operator. It's a bounded operator, which is
a bounded operator. So when you write dA, what do you mean? Do you mean this?
It's just one form.
The one
So-
form as you defined it, right? This commutator with the Dirac operator.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The
Okay,
one
thank
form, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so I skip this. So to answer previous question, also, if you want to compute the spectral action for a fluctuation of the Dirac operator for the non-competitive tori, we did this with Luis Eswadril and Cyril Levy and Andrej. Well, in dimension 2, this spectral action has only one term, because the term lambda 0 is 0 because you are dealing with a flat torus. In dimension 4, you have the appearance of these terms till the moment, the standard field strength and no field gas. Okay, but
Tau is the trace, yes?
sorry.
Tau is the trace, yes, on this algebra, or what is tau in this formula on the right hand side?
Oh yeah, sorry, it's a trace.
The trace. Okay.
Yeah, okay. The natural trace on the non-competitive torus. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But we were able to prove only under a Diophantine condition. Okay. And this means that, you know, this is where the dragoons are. They are waiting for you to burn you instantaneously, because otherwise I don't know how to prove this. I don't know the result in general, even for this simple elementary object, which is the non-competitive torus. So,
This is,
okay.
sorry,
I'm finished.
this is for flat torus, right?
Yeah, flat torus, yeah. But it's the same for the non-flat torus. I mean, same problem. Okay, we don't know the answer. So what conclusion? We recovered many non-results, natural because we have mimicked the situation. We produced new results in pure not result. But I would like to insist on what we have to do. We have to control the difference between the spectral action and its asymptotics, because we know that in physics there are a lot of physical phenomena which are exponentially small. So at the asymptotics you get nothing different, but we know that we have perturbed the system. So it's important mathematically to analyze this. And for the young people in the audience, I don't know where they are, please compute new example. That's most important thing. And if you are interested by quotation, look at this, which is almost 1 century ago. So thank you for details. Just compute with Michal. Michal made an important contribution to this.
Thank you very much, Bruno. We are on a very tight schedule, but if there is one question.
I just have one comment.
Yeah, please.
About your last comment. Your quote of Abel reminds me of Euler's attitude, which is totally opposite. Euler had the view that every series is convergent. We just have to find the meaning of convergence.
I agree with this, but
I mean, it's a totally opposite point of view. And it's, I mean, you know that without divergent series, we cannot do anything in analysis. You know that.
Yeah,
you
I know.
So Abel was very provocative here. Yeah.
Sure.
It's just a fun comment. Yeah. Thank you very much for your nice talk. Yeah.
So thank you once again. We can stop recording right now. So any more question? One question?
Maybe. So, okay. So I have a quick question. So in the